Hey folks, my name is Abraham,
My name's Austin.
and today we're here to talk to you about stop motion animation.
So we are currently working on our third stop motion short film on YouTube. We thought we'd share some insight on the script writing process.
We've only been doing this a short while, but we've learned a lot in our journey. So hopefully, you can learn something from us, and we can learn something from you. Let's get started.
So every story starts with an idea, obviously. So our first film we made, For Am I, it was based off a short story we wrote. That's a very good way to just get an idea for something if you already have like a previous work to base it off of. Our second film, however, Skins Giving, we didn't have any story to base it off. All we had was an idea, which is like a skin cult. We had a concept, so we wanted to build a story off of that. And our current film we're working on is a sequel to the first film we made. So obviously, creating an idea for a sequel is a lot different than an original film.
The next step is obviously then taking that idea and putting it to, a format that fits a short film better. Like Austin said, with the first one, it was based off of a short story he had to write for an English class. Then we had to take that and make it into something that could be stretched out from, a 2-page short story to a 10-minute short film. We had to take the characters and give them a little bit more depth, look at who this lead detective was. Then we had to look at the world he existed in, how he interacted with that world, and more importantly, how that world interacted with him, to make the environment around him as kind of a secondary character. That was also something we had to do with, establishing the world at the very beginning. We opened with a shot of a talk show host talking about robots and introducing them so that we had a way of establishing the world and how it treated robots and how it functioned as a society with robots living alongside humans.
Obviously, for the first film, we had a story to base it off. But our second film, Skins Giving, we had no story to base it off. So it was originally just a concept. We were in a class together. We came up with this holiday where a cult wears these people's skins, each other's skins. That's important.
Very important.
But we
It's the
didn't
communal skin that's important.
watch the film. It's good. It didn't have a story yet. We just had this concept. So we had to build a story with the concept. I think that's a good place to start. So we came up with someone outside the cult gets involved, joins it, and uncovers the truth.
The film we're currently working on, For Am I 2, is a sequel to the first one. That's a very different kind of story writing process because you're looking at how the last story ended, how it leads into the next film. You want to look at the ending of the first story not just as, an ending, but instead as a beginning of where you think, the world is going, this new story you're setting up. One thing people say a lot with, movie sequels is, was it necessary? That's not a great way of looking at it because, no story is really necessary, but it helps to know, what unanswered questions do you have left over that would be worth delving into with a sequel?
If you're making a sequel, you have to wonder, what should you do and what makes a good sequel? So obviously we're no experts, but we think a good sequel, obviously the character arc of the protagonist, assuming it's the same protagonist in the sequel, should continue. You don't want it to just end in the first one and then have them have no character in the sequel. You also want the world building to build more. As you're seeing more of it now, you can really build more on stuff that maybe was lacking in the first one. If the first one had a theme, you would want to build more of it, express it more in the sequel. And also, a sequel should be new and familiar. You don't want it to just be a clone of the first one. You want it to feel new and expand on the first one, but also have it feel like it is a sequel of the first one. It is the same series, so you don't want to change it too differently in the sequel so that it doesn't even feel involved with the first one.
For example, the film we're working on right now is, as we said, a sequel. And so for the first one, one of the undercurrent themes of the film was the anti-robot feelings, or the robophobia as we call it. Then for this one, we decided to make that more of a central theme. We're looking more not just at this robot that happens to have a lot of hate towards him, but looking more at his interactions with people in this hateful world and how that hate is growing against him. And that's something we'll continue to build throughout, further stories, as this growing antagonizing force that he has to, come into conflict with time and time again.
We found that a good way to form the process of making a story and eventually a script is 3 steps or 3 docs, pages. The first doc should be just writing down the whole idea you have. It's good to take the idea that's just in your head and actually write it down somewhere. That way you have it somewhere to read it and branch out and add more in a physical space that's just outside of your mind's creativity.
That's important because then it leads us into the next step, is making a second document, which is a more full story outline. You take the scenes you have and you want to decide, what happens when. The basic outline of the story, but you want to cut it into sizable chunks that you can make for, this is beat 1, this is beat 2. You can look at what the characters are doing in each scene, where they're going, have a framework that you can then write a script around.
So obviously a film could be multiple scenes or it could just be one scene. These are short films after all. They don't have to be as rigid or follow the same rules as full feature-length films. I think that's one of the best things about short films, is that you can essentially do whatever you want.
Before you start writing a script, you want to know where your story ends so you can chart a path to it properly. Set up the things you need to set up. Know what your characters are doing, because you're going to have side characters. Some of them are more important than others, but some of them, you just want to know what's happening to them.
When you're obviously thinking over the full story, you're going to have a lot of places and sets, so it's good to list them out, know what sets you're going to need, so that when you go into actually building sets, if you're doing stop motion or Lego, it's good to know what you need to actually build beforehand.
It's also important when you're planning these things out to know the limits of your technology. What assets do you have available and how can you use them well? For example, for our first film, 4MI, it was a 10-minute film and we had a lot of different sets, a lot of different locations. But for our second, Skinsgiving, we had 3 or 4 sets maybe that we just, we had a couple, we moved them around a bit so they looked a little different, but we didn't need as much. One thing you may wonder is, I have a lot of Lego that I build all these sets out of. And you may wonder, do I need to have that many Lego? No, you do not. No one needs that much. It's ridiculous. I need help. But just know the limits of what you have. Do something creative with that. You could do it all in one room if you want, because you're doing a short film,
Do a 12 Angry Men, but in stop motion.
Exactly. The exact same film, but with Legos instead. That's creativity.
Write that down. It's also important to know,
I just did a really wacky wink at the camera. I'm sorry, I forgot I was
it's so hot in here. Also important to know what's in the background, what other props you need for when you're actually building the sets and filming. What else do you need? It's also good to know beyond the background, what's in the real world. If you can see beyond the set and the shot, do you want it to look like that, or do you want something to cover it up? Obviously, you can think about that more when you're building. It's good to maybe have an idea and know what you can do. After that second document, the third document would be the final script.
I'm sorry I did that, but I'm keeping it in. Just keep talking. Just keep rolling the script, Austin. Keep going. Move along like I'm not even here.
Now it's your turn.
Oh, all right. For this first script, we sat down and we wrote the whole thing out together. We had our outline, we'd had our, a couple meetings, and then we sat down over the course of, maybe 2 or 3 days and just wrote out a script. Turned those outline blocks into, scene descriptions and, text blurbs, dialogue, monologues, quadrilogues. That's when 4 people talk over each other at the same time.
Good to know. For the later scripts, we were at college, so we couldn't be in person together. So we did all remotely. I'd make a script, I'd send over him, we'd send it back and forth, and keep changing it, adding more. Obviously, if you're working alone, you can just do this all by yourself.
The thing about script writing is you don't have to follow all the same structures that like big Hollywood movies are doing or, TV shows are doing, because, it only has to make sense to you. When we wrote our script, like we looked at, screenplay examples that we had, but we really just wanted something so we would know, who's talking, who's doing what, You don't have to have all the same lingo. It doesn't need to be formatted exactly the same. But as long as it's something that you understand, it's something the people you're working with can understand, then you're all set. You're good to go.
Another good idea.
I'm sorry. Sorry, I just really wanted to do that.
Another good idea is to write down all the times of the scenes, and also if it's interior or exterior. That way, when you go and actually film it, you would know kind of what lighting you need and how to keep it consistent across the same time or the same place.
It's also good to think of voice actors when you're doing the script, for the characters, because knowing the voice helps you kind of understand the character. And even when you're writing, if you're saying it out loud in like whatever the voice the character would be speaking in, it can help you like inform yourself about who this character is and then build on them more. It kind of grows together, the character with the voice.
If you have more than one voice actor, it's good to try to cast the roles so that you don't have the same people talking to themselves in a different role. That can make it kind of awkward having like the same voice for two different characters in the same conversation. Obviously you can do different voices yourself, so it's not necessary, but it's pretty nice to have a variety of sounds of people while they're talking to each other.
It's very important to remember that a script is never going to be finished. You're not going to have a finished script until, you're done making the whole movie. You're constantly going to be changing it, and that's fine.
You also won't know how lines will sound until you speak them aloud to yourself. Obviously, if you're going to film yourself talking, record the lines, you'll learn then, what sounds awkward or what sounds fine and what needs to change. I think it's pretty smart to do that ahead of time, maybe while you're writing the script. That way it's just one less thing to do while you're trying to finally film.
The most important thing is that you set yourself up for a successful and a fun experience.
You know what they say, the first rule of screenwriting is to have fun.
Maybe the real screenwriting was the friends we made along the way.
Or the enemies we made along the way.
Yes, I will kill him after this.
Okay.
They will not find the body.
Important thing to note is to, if you're gonna work with a partner, choose someone who you don't hate.
Exactly.
I unfortunately made that mistake.
Austin, what are we gonna do with you? Well, that's all for this one, folks. In our next video, we'll go into the set building process and the character building process, so you can learn a little bit more about that.
Make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, ring the bell so you don't miss the next one, and stay tuned for our upcoming film, For My 2.
If you found any of our tips helpful, or if you've got any tips for us, leave them in the comments, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.